a way to reproduce something like it or something even better, depending on how things are mutated. Yeah? So you have a single cellular organism eventually becoming multicellular, or something that is very simple, I can't say simple, but something that is not as complex as a human being, but that's how it gives rise to eventually, by this total process where there's no intelligence involved. Is that believable?
From my perspective, I don't see that there is no intelligence. I mean, I can imagine there is an intelligence from which everything it begins. For example, created the mechanisms of evolution from. Yes, so it can make sense for me.
Okay.
That there is the creator which created the world.
So you believe in what we call theistic evolution?
Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah?
We can call it like this.
Yeah. So you believe God is the one who's directing this process to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does that tally with the narrative that the evolutionists are saying? Because they are saying evolution is a process governed by these mechanisms. So you are coming up with some alternative theories. Why do you even entertain that?
So maybe it's just my interpretation of and I'm trying to connect science and theism.
Okay, so you're saying you're trying to reconcile, excuse me, I'm listening to you, by the way. You're trying to reconcile what we called the evolutionary paradigm that has already been accepted by people, and you want to see how you can then take that on board and see whether you can have both evolution and both theism or your belief both together. So you're trying to reconcile them, making it compatible, isn't it? You're trying to...
I mean, I'm not saying this is true. I'm mostly asking questions what is wrong with this interpretation?
Okay, so this is where, I mean, Muslims, we can say fine, we can discuss that and we can see, is there a scope for this reconciliation or compatibility? Is there a scope? Does Islam allow, for example, room for the understanding where there can be this natural processes governed by Allah's laws, governed by Allah's laws, that's how He is creating them, not instantaneous creation, but He creates them in these processes, right? And then eventually human beings comes along. So you have what we call, either you believe, no, that's not the case, total creationism, Allah placed every creation at specific time point, maybe instantaneously, or there's some kind of exceptionalism. There may be human exceptionalism, or Adamic exceptionalism, or no exception. No exception camp would be something like everything came through evolutionary processes, including Adam and Eve, meaning they would have, within this paradigm, parents and foreparents, when there's no exception. Of course, in Islam, through the Islamic text, this is an absolute no-no. This will be totally unacceptable, because there are clear evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah that Adam alayhi salam or Eve, they were not someone who had parents. So you have to totally disregard or reject this kind of scope of interpretation of evolution. Okay? So how do you then explain the similarities of so-called hominids, human-like beings living contemporaneously or before human beings, or before what we consider Adam alayhi salam? This is where some Muslims will try to say, okay, fine, let's see whether we have a scope of reconciliation. Maybe we have this, what we call Adamic exceptionalism. I'm not giving my view yet in this here, I'm just showing you what's out there, in which you have Adam alayhi salam was miraculously inserted within a particular time frame. So there were all these humanoids, Australopithecus, Neanderthals, whatever, right? All this previous human-like beings or creatures floating around on this earth, and Adam was a specific creation on a similar biology and physiology or phenotype that was inserted within that time frame. Miraculous creation, not having fathers and mothers. That's an Adamic exceptionalism, okay? That's one scope. I'm not telling you what my position is, I'm just saying Muslims are trying on this way. Well, if they do, for example, then this is one way they will say, fine, you know what? This is how I can reconcile evolution. Maybe evolution through this particular process happened, and I don't have a problem with that, but I cannot accept Adam alayhi salam being evolved in that manner. There are others that will say, we go even to human exceptionalism, in which even human beings are exceptionally created or placed by Allah in this form. That means you cannot say all these hominids and so on, or also ancestors, or around during the time of Adam alayhi salam, for example. Okay? All human beings will be a miraculous creation. So you have broadly four camps. The question is now, how much of it does Islam allow to accept and show its compatibility within this evolutionary paradigm? So as I said, from the ideological standpoint, of course we cannot take evolution like that. We say it's a directed creation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His will, His might, His knowledge, His wisdom, and His plan. He's the one who designed it. So we are not proposing for what we call this intelligent design theories. No, Allah is the one who created all of these things. But the question is, did Allah create this in this particular way? That's the question. And people are trying to reconcile the existence of the similarities within, either in the homology, in how you see, similar kind of structures to do the similar kind of function, whether there's some kind of, evidence pointing towards that, yes, there seems to be an evolution because of a fossil record, because there seems to be a complexity as you go along time, okay, without actually having any evidence of connectivity that one came right from the other. The only connection they can make is like, okay, fine, we have evidence from genetics, for example, that we can have similarity in our gene pool or certain sequence within our gene that points to. That's when they can say that we need to now take that on board and try to understand and analyze and see how much of it actually is true or not. So the idea, for example, that you have this, Neanderthal and the Denisovian, people, coming together and having genes. I think that paper by Sloan et al. is still quite controversial. I'm still trying to read it and see where is the scope of validity of the strength of the scientific evidence. But as you can see, the issues are there, right? Back in the past, I want to give you something that's important to understanding when it comes to evolution. Evolution is something that Muslims would never take it just like that, right? As you said, you would say we might consider it, but only we consider that this is already a plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, to create it like this. Do you remember, because of this evolutionary paradigm, what happened in the earlier centuries? They had this belief that even human beings today, at that time, in the 18th century, they were evolving. They had human zoos. They would exhibit people from certain parts of Africa or even Australian Aborigines, and they will exhibit in France, in Brussels and so on. So this is an exhibit of how people are still not so developed, right? They would feed them like animals. If you type in on the internet history of human zoos, and you'll find many of these examples. What's his name? Is it Ota Benga? I can't remember his name now again. Is it Ota Benga, this particular individual? I mean, he was put in a cage with chimpanzees as an exhibit, like how, this is like a missing link. That's what they're trying to do. The white men was trying to show how the black people in Africa, in Australia, and Aborigines and others, right, the Native Americans, probably they were the missing links, and they exhibited them in the zoos, talking about, these people are, the champions of human rights and human equality, but look at their history. They were trying to establish and justify their views. So we had these things happening. People from Australia, the Australian Aborigines, they were kidnapped. Children were kidnapped. And they were brought to British and American museums to see whether they, in fact, to analyze them, whether they were the missing link. The Australian Prime Minister, recently had to apologize for those lost generation. Yeah, and the American the Parliament or the representatives, or whatever the form of the body is, they had to also compensate about what, $25,000 or $250,000 each for each individual, which they did forced sterilization. They even sterilized people because they were considered to be like, come on, you're not even worthy to be saved because you're not on the human ladder of progress. So in Virginia, instead of Virginia, people were forced to be sterilized. Certain group of people. Hitler, what did he do? And the Nazis, what did they do? They had this concept of eugenics. That these Jewish people, come on, they can be got rid of because they're not on the ladder of human progress and civilization. That was exactly what led by this evolutionary paradigm. People believe in evolution and they try to justify this by looking at people all around them. So we cannot forget this baggage of what evolution means, and we cannot just simply then say, let's reconcile evolution, because evolution is okay, just a means of how people develop and so on and so forth. We always have to take that into account. So when Muslims reconcile or try to make compatibility of Islam and evolution, our scope needs to be understood. Is it acceptable or not? So we recently had a program on DawahWise. Those of you who are watching not on DawahWise channel, we have our own platform, me and Hashim, called DawahWise, and this is the icon. Okay, please subscribe and watch our conversation on DawahWise. Yep, and watch that program. We had part 1 where we discussed a particular theory about how it can be reconciled or not, and we have part 2 this Wednesday coming, inshallah, in which this Dr. Shoaib Malik will try to present his evidence and answer the objections. Okay, but that is one particular view that we are presenting, and we will, of course, in the future analyze the strengths and weaknesses of this view. Muslims are more than welcome to look at it, analyze it, and see how much of it is acceptable or not. So we are asking these questions. We are taking on challenges and see how evolution is presenting a challenge to the Muslim faith and how that can be addressed, whether there is indeed a scope of acceptability or not. And you will see that, of course, we will bring other views as well to see where we can accommodate evolution or not. So far what I've said is what part of evolution that cannot be accommodated, the ideology, the morality and the ethics that comes with it. How did they do all of these things? Because they thought this was a morally good thing to do, to get rid of those people. Even today, why should we stop thinking? Aren't there people around with this evolutionary paradigm in mind? They might think, why should we care about the welfare of the third world, or those populations where they're poor, where they don't have any money and resources to have better health? Maybe they should be left to their demise, because evolution is all about the survival of the fittest, where the people who have the technology, the advancements and the resources, they may be the ones with the better brains and the better, in the ladder of human evolution. So why should we even care about those people? So let the poor die in their poverty. Let the sick people die in their deathbed. Why should we help them? Is this why sometimes people may ask why we don't have global eradication of malaria, for example, when we have the technology to bring in anti-malarials, but they don't produce this in mass scales where it's needed. It's not given it to them because there are pharma companies who may not consider them because of this global ideology that they are upholding. Is it that or not? I'm only asking questions. I'm not giving you my verdict or opinion.
Darwin, for example, in his theory of evolution, he himself said that there are gaps in evolution that he couldn't just reconcile.
Yeah.
And so now this theory got accepted as a fact, actually, on the premise that we'll find those missing links in the future. So
Yeah, but I'm not only questioning about missing links, because missing links, come on, I mean, they will say, come up with examples and say missing links is something, will still remain missing, but there you go, there are some intermediary forms. Then what would you say? I mean, the people who totally reject evolution, they will say, but that's a species on its own. Even though it shares some similarity between the earlier form and a later form, it doesn't mean it's a missing link. There's always going to be a dispute. Other times, you might say, what about all the other missing links that we expect? The evolutionary camp might say, because of the fragile nature of bones and so on, others, you don't expect them to survive, to leave record fossilized for our posterity. So you won't have as much of those in the beginning to have them as an evidence. So this is not what should be the point of discussion, that because we have missing links and so on and so on. We should rather tackle the ideological stand of evolutionary ideas and what it has impact today on our lives, what they're doing. People, I mean, why should I stop there? They were even considering with this evolutionary paradigm that women are the inferior species because of the brain size, the skull and the brain size. Women, even women, champions of human rights and women's rights. Go back to your story and find out how these people who believed in eugenics and evolution, how they considered women to be inferior species and so on. They were not even worth considering them your same equal counterpart. Even women, and within human species. So evolution itself has this very dangerous ideological standpoint on morality, on how it considers other human beings, other races as well. Eugenics wasn't something just like something what we called utopic, fictional thing. It was real. People were doing this. Hitler was doing this, and others were doing this. The eugenics about how you think because of the genes and superiority, you would try to select and breed others, and you would be even open to destroy and kill and abort and damage those babies. Okay, kill them because they're not the best ones. You will try to get the best out of all this which is the best class genetically, right? So if, for example, today we have people who are disabled, what does it say from evolutionary paradigm? Talking about human rights. Disabled people. What is his stand from evolutionary paradigm? They should be left to die. They are the ones which are not fit for the environment because the nature has made them weaker species. Weak in some form, in a physical form. Those who are mentally incapacitated, according to evolutionary paradigm, why should you treat them? Because they are not the best, the fittest in society. So no wonder you will find those people who have these views, they might not today tell you about it because they have adopted equality and human rights and so on and so forth, but underlying principle, they will never disagree that there is continuous evolution even within human species because evolution hasn't stopped. Because that's the whole process is. Evolution is a process in which there's always going to be this development, this change, even within human species. That means there will be layers of human species in human culture and societies. Some of them are better, some of them are superior. Others are inferior. So you can never look at people equally in this light of evolutionary paradigm. Okay, that's talking about evolution as a paradigm ideologically. Scientifically, Muslims have a challenge. How do we account for the so-called human-like creatures, Neanderthals, Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and various others? Is there a genetic link? Was there an intermarriage between them? and so on. So this is a scope that we have to ask. How much does Islam, Quran, or the Sunnah, the prophetic tradition, allows us to take this on board or not? Are there Quranic ayat which restricts taking the position that even human beings cannot be, what I meant to say is like even human beings has to be excluded from the evolutionary paradigm only, or those other creatures that also is also a human being or not? Okay, how do we account for them? Does the Quran say humanity or insan and bashar is from Adam alayhi salam, or insan, the word insan or bashar, that some scholars trying to talk about like Shahrur or another thing, maybe bashar refers to these hominoids or hominids, and insan is a particular, subset of the bashar in which Adam alayhi salam is. Does that allow that interpretation? I mean, I'm not going to give you the answer now to you. I want this discussion to continue. I want people to understand that yes, we are taking this on board. So next Wednesday, inshallah, we'll talk about something of this, and we will, bring this as a challenge, God willing, to our panel member, who's going to esteemed panel member, who's going to talk about this, and on our channel in Dawah Wise, and we will open up this discussion to continue, and we'll see whether we can have alternative viewpoints too, in which Muslims can then have a solid stance in terms of taking what is the position Muslims should take in terms of evolution and Islamic faith. Do we have the scope to reconcile it, or do we not have? Because you will find there are differences of opinion already, but we need to know what these are, and we need to be well informed of this, because our youth are facing this challenge. They're going to school, colleges, universities, and they're learning about this. How do we equip our youth with resources, tools, knowledge, and foundation to answer these questions? And this will be, inshallah, a project, as we were saying, it's already happened from last week, to empower our Muslims to answer this question in a way that gives them confidence that yes, as a Muslim, I can have that stance. Whether I totally reject it or accept some of it or whatever, they will have this confidence and the certainty and not have these doubts remaining as a Muslim. Because that's what we want to do as Dawah Wise, this YouTube channel, in which inshallah will pave the way so that Muslims don't fall into the trap of saying Islam doesn't provide a solution to it. It may be that our scholars, our theologians, our Islamic Muslim academics have not really come up to this challenge of explaining to you in public and so on and so forth, because they didn't consider it something that needs explaining, or maybe they didn't feel the need at that point. But now we see that it is important, something that needs to be addressed. Okay, so people need to take that as a matter of research for their own ideological or own personal stance in terms of evolution. Okay, you can have a stance in which you can be fully creationist, but you cannot have a stance where you say everything, including human beings and Adam alayhi salam, is a product of evolution. So I'm giving you two spectrums. One, you can reject total evolutionary paradigm because of the way it is, and you explain the scientific challenges that are there. And the other one, you can't as a Muslim. So within this two spectrum, where do you take your position is what inshallah we are going to learn in the few weeks to come. And we are addressing this, as we are saying, in Dawah Wise YouTube channel. You're more than welcome to tune in this Wednesday. Dawah Wise, that's where you should be finding that discussion happening, inshallah. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm not giving you my stance, but I've given you certain points to really understand, where the challenges are for a Muslim, and why Muslims shouldn't even be scared to talk about, and why Muslims shouldn't even be doubtful in their faith because of this evolution coming along. Why should it even rock the faith of a Muslim just because we have all those things? As you said, Allah could have created it like that. And if you explain the existence of other human-like creatures within this paradigm, there you go. These are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Adam alayhi salam is a specific creation. The various ways, as I said, but the question is, do you have the resources and tools to have that position with you, is what we want to empower you with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Barakallah fiik. Okay. So let's leave the discussion here, inshallah. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.